is with the
Yeah,
captain
a
stuff?
little correction. You called me Mark Harris. I think you got your gingers confused. Harris, we look the same. You're ginger racist, Sean. You're like, oh,
I know
racists look the same. I'm just
you,
fucking with
you
you.
all look alike to me.
Yeah, we all look alike to us too,
Good morning. I'm so happy today to interview Mark Harris. Mark is a former medic with 573. He currently works with the Los Angeles County Fire Department. He's been working with Los Angeles Fire for quite a while, but he got his start way back in 3505, the 82nd Airborne. So welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, great. So I guess let's just jump in and start talking. I definitely want to talk about what you're doing now and how where you got started, how the Army's influenced that. But why don't we start back then? So when did you join up? You like '04 about?
No, I actually joined up. Kind of rewind is I grew up with a lot of firemen in my neighborhood, so I was actually graduated high school in 2000, and I was going to school taking like fire technology courses to become a firefighter in Southern California. And I joined up right after 9/11. 9/11 happened. Of course, I was in the thick of becoming a firefighter then. And I quit the process. I actually signed the papers. I think it was November or December of 2001, right after 9/11. And I left for basic training in June of 2002. And then, of course, signed up to be a combat medic. The reason I did a combat medic because I was like, okay, I wanted to fight and then also do something that could help me with the fire service, So I was like, oh, I'll be a combat medic, paratrooper, and then, do my 4 years, which ended up turning into 6 because I was stop loss for 2 years. And then once I finished the Army, of course, continued pursuing the career in the fire department. And I've been working for LA County Fire now for 13 years. So, yeah, primarily working in Inglewood, South Central, and Lenox is where I've done majority of my time. So some of the roughest and busiest areas in the county.
Yeah, that's tricky stuff. How did your military experience lead into that? Does that help you at all with I'm sure it does.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, number one, the medical part of it was, very easy. The base medical training in the Army is EMT. So I've had to take EMT now 3 times, once with the Army, once with the fire department, and I took EMT before I was in the Army. So, and then all of the experience, especially with the trauma and sick call, dealing with, the vast majority of our calls are medical calls. So that has come in very much handy. And then also my department ended up sending me to UCLA for paramedic school too. So I became a paramedic also. And that was fairly easy, with the training and the experience I had, especially on the trauma side of things. And then also just the leadership role of being a senior medic, but also being around some great leaders like, Clemens and Athene and Hoppus. And I can name a million of the great leaders we had in our, Dobbins and that we had, using them as example now when I'm on fires and putting myself in places of friction to help loosen things up to keep the operations going has been a great asset, and there's nothing I've seen in the fire service that compares to a lot of the stuff we saw over to Iraq with combat, stuff like that. And so it has definitely been a great asset and key, and has made me to be a great firefighter, paramedic. And I actually just about 4 days ago took the captain's test too. So I'm looking to go to Dark, become an officer. So I'm gonna go be a captain. I'm skipping engineering, going straight to captain, and hopefully I find out in a few weeks if I pass that.
Oh, good stuff. That's good stuff. Well, the start that you got, especially in the Army, I know we talked with Brad Rather already about it, but you medics got hit really hard. Doc Woodruff especially had a really intense training regimen to make sure everyone was up to speed. How do you feel your Army training? How do you think? I guess you know what. Let's rewind a little bit because you were in 3505 before our transition, and you ended up going to Katrina with us, right? I believe.
Yeah, actually, I got to 3505 when they just got back from Afghanistan. So I was with the deployment to Iraq the first time. My platoon sergeant, my first platoon sergeant was the legendary First Sergeant Reyes, who unfortunately passed away. He was a 1505 first sergeant. And then I had First Sergeant Coomer was my platoon sergeant on our first tour. I was in second platoon Charlie. Got ambushed. Had my first MCI was my first month there, so I had that 7 casualties right off the bat. I was the only one there, and that was a great foundation for this next deployment. You know, our first deployment was nothing compared to our second, but we did treat several casualties under fire and was in firefights and IEDs and stuff like that. So that was a great baseline. I was a line medic the entire 6 years I was in the Army. I was one of those weirdos that was able to fight to stay in the line the whole time. So the 3505 was a great foundation with my time in CCO and then eventually BCO. 3505 was a great experience, had some great infantry platoon sergeants that really set me up for success later on in other deployments and stuff. And I did go to Katrina. I was originally the Charlie Troop senior medic when we were doing the transition. But I did not know Captain Carson too well. And I did know First Sergeant Leeworthy very well. But I was really good and had a good working relationship with Phil Kinnery. And he was the original B Troop CO. So I was like, you know what? And then also I'd been infantry the whole time. I was like, I'd always liked DECO because DECO are the heavy weapons companies in the infantry. So I kind of wanted to be around the 50 cals and the Mark 19s and the TOWs. So I'm like, hey, let's try something new. I had a really good relationship with Phil. And so, and then eventually had an amazing teamwork and relationship with Mike Clemens, you know, as my first sergeant. And so that's why I ended up going over to B Troop, leaving C Troop. I was the most senior of the senior medics, one of the most senior guys in the platoon that was left. So I kind of got the chance to choose my troop, and I chose B Troop.
Well, let's jump into the training question again from there. The training, obviously, like we've talked about, the 82nd, especially under Doc Woodruff, had very intense training. Do you notice anything different about like being a medic in a paratrooper unit than perhaps maybe another line unit would be? Or was there any kind of specialty skills, or how did all of that set you up for success later down the road?
I think our training regiment was very good, and especially with my guys, I used my experience with my first tour. With everyone's going to have MCIs, multi-casualty incidents, and a lot of times you're going to be by yourself. So I really focused with my guys, which was what you're going to do when you have 6 to 7 guys by yourself that are wounded. I went over a lot of the casualty collection point, like how do you do your CCPs in urban and wild, and then more like the trench areas, which are kind of like the wild, like the farmlands we were in. It's like pretty much trenches. And set that up from my experience with them. Doc Rather did great with, had Doc Rather time every week where he went over specialty skills and stuff like that. Sergeant Woodruff was big on, you know, making sure that we went a lot with our assessments and things like that. So what was great, I loved being a platoon medic, but really being a senior medic was great because I could set up the kind of training regime I had with my guys. And I really focused on assessments, casualty collection points, treating the wounds, you know, under fire with gear on, and also was real adamant that the guys learn how to fight and also treat. You know, our weapons are preventive medicine is what I told the guys. So I wanted them training with their guys. And when we were out in the field, you know, you have kind of carte blanche to what you want to train on. So I did a lot of stress assessments, like, you know, how you do stress shoots. We would do stress assessments. So when the guys were firing guns all around my guys, I'd make them run a half mile with all their kit, come in, do an assessment as the guys are shooting on the range. Another training thing I did with the guys where we would be in the gun trucks and we were kind of doing movement to contact, bounding with our trucks. So the 50 cals marks are going at the same time. And I would tap the shoulder of one of the, you know, Cav scouts or infantry guys, and they would fall out of the turret like they were wounded. Another guy would get up on the gun, and I would make my medics, and I'm in the back with them. You know how cramped those Humvees are, which made it even better. Under night vision, be like, assess him, find the injury, patch him up, and now give him an IV as they're bumping and shooting with under night. So I did stuff like that, which was pretty much way stressful than a lot of the situations we would have. Not to say that the situations weren't stressful, but you know, a lot of times you weren't bumping in a car treating a casualty. So that's some of the, I wanted to make it harder than it would be in real life type of thing. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the training that I set up for the guys, and also how I wanted them to do the assessments, and then the training from the aid station, Sergeant Woodruff, and also pretty much Doc Rather, which was very intense with learning new skills and things like that.
Yeah, that stress training, I know when we would do it for stress shooting or other things like that, it very much paid off for us, and I imagine the medics as well. Putting someone in a realistic situation, or even more, like just the sounds, things that you don't predict when you finally do get overseas, it really does pay off in the end. Just having that foresight and forethought, and I think that the skills of having people who have deployed, being able to hand that down to other people, you know, from deployment to deployment, that kind of generational skill training is absolutely essential. So you said you were the senior medic with Bravo Troop when we finally got over to 573.
Yeah, so I chose Bravo Troop after being Charlie Troop for a little bit, and then became Bravo Troop. And like I said, it was, you know, First Sergeant Clemens, and then also Captain Kinnery, and then eventually been Captain Dobbins, who's also an old 3505 guy. And then Kinnery went to HHT. So I was lucky that I knew both of my COs fairly well, which is key. Being a medic, you kind of get pulled back and forth between headquarters and your troop. So it was good to, and also First Sergeant Manis, which was a first sergeant in Bravo Company 3505. So he knew me. So it was good to have know the leadership on both sides, because it kind of sucks as a medic. You do get pulled by both animals, and both are vying for your time. And, you know, so I was lucky that I knew my command element really well.
I know when we first deployed in 06, Bravo Troop, Charlie Troop, and Alpha Troop got split up. So I don't know exactly what happened with Bravo Troop. I know we ended up doing a lot of medcaps, or like civilian engagements with medical training and all that. Where did Bravo Troop end up going when we first got into country, and how did you guys kind of get set up for the deployment there?
So when we first got into country, if you guys remember, Bravo Red went to Charlie Troop, and Charlie Red came to Bravo Troop. So we ended up having that infantry platoon and 2 Cav Scout platoons, and then also we used our mortar as another platoon as well. So we technically had 4 maneuver elements plus the headquarters element. And our first engagement was Charlie Troop was kind of on the border, and they were doing a lot of kind of stuff on the border, interdiction stuff, and also working with the Iraqi police and Iraqi National Guard and Army. We were kind of told to start just reconning areas, especially Turkey Village and Balad Ruz. So we were out of Caldwell, and our setup was, of course, Charlie Red, and then the 2 Bravo Troop platoons as well. And we just started doing reconnaissance and missions throughout south of Balad Ruz and in Balad Ruz itself. And just kind of seeing, like, how's the enemy fighting? What are they doing? And we kind of figured out it's like the enemy was kind of using Balad Ruz as a training area. And we would see the lanes like, oh, they always put IEDs in this part of this town. They're doing ambushes on this side of town, and they're doing training on this side of town. So we kind of found like this was kind of like a resting stop for the jihadis, and also a training area for the jihadis, in a command and control area. And I know we did a lot of reconnaissance south of Balad Ruz, and later found out intelligence that some of their IEDs weren't working against us. And then we started finding, we started hitting AT mines and IEDs, and also making contact, small arms, and especially mortars, when we get too far south. And we're like, okay, they're trying to keep us out of this area. Why are they trying to keep us out of this area? Because they're actually standing and setting up indirect fire, which insurgents usually don't want to do in the middle of the day unless they really want to keep you out of somewhere. And then eventually that led into more leadership recons with the air elements using the helicopters, and that led into Turkey Bull 1. But that was all facilitated with Bravo troops moving south. We used to call it the gauntlet. We were getting hit when we reached just south of the cemetery. We're like, okay, they're trying to keep us out. And then our leadership being, having common sense and being smart, looked into past engagements, and they're like, wow, the 101st didn't really come down here very often. And also there was an SFA team, I believe, that got into like a good 24-hour scrap down there. And they're like, okay, this is something we need to investigate more. And then when they did that leadership recon, of course, that led into Turkey Bowl 1. But before that, we had taken the first casualties of the unit was Bravo Troop when Sergeant Lore's truck hit a IED. And that was kind of definitely Winders. And I think Harriman too was with me at that time. That was their first intro to treating casualties. And they did great. And allowed me, especially that first instance, was kind of step back and be more of a senior medic, and then working with First Sergeant Clemens about bringing in the air ambulance and stuff like that. And that was something that was great about our training, especially Doc Rather's stabilization training, because everything was air evac, if you remember. And there were times where we would have to stabilize the patient, either enemy or even our own guys, for up to 12 hours before a bird could get in. And so that was kind of great training. But that was our first contact, was just before Turkey Bowl 1. And that led into, of course, like I said, the air recon that started the whole, operation.
No, that's really interesting. I had not heard that part before. That is, I find that really fascinating, because so many things have suddenly clicked in my mind now. Again, being an Alpha Troop, we were separated from that, doing our own thing with Fourth ID, I think it was. But, no, that's fascinating. But I had heard about the SF teams running into trouble there, and that was kind of why. Sorry, I have things falling down. It was just an interesting area. I know too. Our medevac in the area, I believe, was dust off as a call sign, at least for most of the time. And dust off was very good. They flew in a lot of air that, potentially they didn't have to. But also, you were mentioning there were times when you'd have to stabilize someone for a long period of time. Is there any specific incidents you remember with that, or how that went? I always give a lot of credit to our medevac units, but then again, like you said, at times it was just impossible to get medevac assets out there.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Diyala is a very interesting place. If it's like kind of like their fruit basket. It is very humid, a lot of rain. So the weather there was actually a lot worse than my first tour, which was around Fallujah, Mahmoudiyya, Yusufiyya area south of Baghdad. And of course, Fallujah is west of Baghdad. It's more drier, not as bad weather conditions, but we could ground evac very easily my first tour. We only did a couple air evacs my first tour. Most of the rest were ground. This one particular, my first really had to sustain a casualty for a long time, was actually Sergeant Roca during Turkey Bowl 1. We got strafed, my element. I was going to get a resupply. So I was about 20 feet from our truck getting water and medical resupplies, and we'll go on more in depth at Turkey Bowl 1, because I ended up evacing, I think, 50-something casualties during Turkey Bowl 1. But I was pretty much lost my restock, was getting my restock. It was an overcast day. This was probably like the 5th or 6th day of Turkey Bowl 2. Sorry, this is Turkey Bowl 2. And an F-15 came and did a strafing run, and they popped out of the clouds and strafed our column. And Sergeant Roca got hit with a fragment or a bouncing 30 mic round from the strafing run right in front of me. It kind of looked like big tennis balls coming towards us. I'll never forget it. I could actually hear, I think it was Hubbard yelling on the radio to call off the second bird. And he was probably 200 yards away and could hear someone screaming on the radio. And I have actually pictures of where the rounds hit our LMTV, and one of them hit Roca in the arm. And we had to sustain him for about a good 12 hours to get permission to fly. They ended up not using a dust-off bird. They used 2 utility birds from 25th ID to come get him. And they also picked up Doc Smith from Caldwell. He was still at Caldwell, and one of our loaned PAs from First Cav. They came in that suit, no visibility, 5 feet visibility, and they flew, landed. We loaded them up just about 8 to 12 hours after initial point of injury. And then they took him to Balad, and then they stayed there the night because the fog was so thick. I know that that crew ended up taking me to my leave, and I mean, because one of the pilots was an old 82nd infantryman, and they talked about. They all ended up getting air medals for valor, and I was like a little upset because the PA and Doc Smith never got recognized for that. That was probably one of the more dangerous missions that was actually done, was to come pick him up, and they didn't receive any recognition, but the crews did. So, but that was my first instance of taking care of a casualty, serious casualty for a long time. And then another time we had shot 3 insurgents, one of them in the head. We had to sustain them. They all survived their injuries. And this was when we had our patrol base down at Turkey after Turkey Bowl. Bravo troops stayed down there. We had to sustain them for about 10 hours. The 3 insurgents were very wounded, very bad. And then they were finally, the weather cleared and picked them up, and they took them away. So that was 2 incidences past the golden hour that we had to do with casualties.
So I'm going to give it a second. I've got a train coming by again. That's what I get for having cheap rent. Okay, let's. I guess we've already led into Turkey Bowl 2 a little bit. Why don't we just start talking about Turkey? You already started with the lead up to Balarus. Y'all had started to realize, hey, there's something big down here. There's this training area that they're doing training missions. There's an area they want us to keep out. It was early November 2006 when the command overflight ended up finding a cache, and that kind of burst everything open. And why don't we go from there? What happened with that? How did you all react to that? And how was Turkey 1 for y'all?
Yeah, so Turkey Bowl 1 was very interesting, very stressful for me and Doc Rather and all the medics for B Troop at that time. But yeah, it started off with that leadership recon in the air, and that's when they found that cache, that underground cache. They flew out Bravo Troops 3rd Platoon, and they secured the cache. And then everyone else, I remember they said, get ready for a multiple day op, and we're heading down there. So we threw all our stuff together, I checked all my medic stuff real quick. And we also had our ATLS team, which was Doc Rather, Matoyer, and then a few other D company guys were driving them. So they were attached to me and Bravo Troop. And then we also got an extra medic with to be with our mortar section as well. I forget exactly who that was, but then we just headed down there. The going down there was a little bit creepy on my end, because the last couple of months we've been dealing with, we can't get down here because we're making contact and having IEDs. We were instantly drove down there with no issue whatsoever. And it kind of reminded me, like, ooh, when things are going right, means things are about to go wrong. And it kind of felt like they let us come in. Now, I later found out, I think we surprised the shit out of them, and they were kind of like, oh shit, what's going on? The entire squadron's down here. And then we went down there and started, finding cache after cache after cache, and blowing them up and stuff like that. And then we eventually started doing air assaults. Bravo Troops started doing air assaults. We set up a little temporary patrol base, circled the wagons, and we did a few air assaults south. No, sorry, that was Turkey. Was that Turkey Bowl 1? Yeah, we did a few air assaults south, and then found some rat trails that they used to get to Baghdad, captured some insurgents as well that were definitely there as a way station heading towards Baghdad. And then once the caches, which took a couple days, if I remember, 2 or 3 days, we found the caches, and we Bravo Troop did those couple air assaults south of our location. Then we got back to our trucks, and then we started, of course, the push forward with Alpha to our right. We were the most extreme left, and I think it went Bravo, Alpha, Charlie, and pushing forward north as one continuous line. And then that's when we started making contact. We could hear Alpha making contact, Charlie making contact, and then it proceeded from there. I think our biggest thing was, I think Turkey Bowl 1, I think I treated something like 15 casualties or so, something like that. I think we did 5 air medevacs. One was, of course, our CO's truck hit a AT mine with guys dismounted around it. So we had Sergeant Lilly was wounded. Dobbins was wounded but refused to be evac'd. We lost our FSO. He had a really bad traumatic brain injury and shrapnel wounds. One of my medics was hurt, Doopy, which was the second platoon medic at that time. And then, so that was one instance. And then we were kind of stuck there because we kept hitting AT mines. And then myself and First Sergeant Clemens and our gun truck actually drove back down through the minefield and set up a blocking position. And then we got a Charlie Red platoon squad came with us too. We set up a blocking position because the enemy started maneuvering on us. And we started in F-16s for some Hellfires, and then did some engagements, small arm engagements with the enemy. And then that was our blocking position until we could get wreckers to come get the Humvees that were destroyed. And that's also the night I learned about Captain Dennison being killed and Rhett being killed, which was Dennison was a platoon leader of mine in Bravo Company 3505. So I knew him very well, knew his wife as well. And then, and also Rhett too, as I knew him from BCO 3505 as well. And it was really sad. It was because, when First Sergeant Clemens came to me, it's like, hey, Rhett and John are dead. The first thing that came to mind was two things. Was number one, Haley was deployed to Afghanistan at this time. And I was like, she's going to find out in the shit on her own deployment. And then next was Matt Miller, because he had not only taken over command of the troop because Dobbins was injured, but also that was one of his best friends. So I immediately talked to him that night and made sure he was all right. And he was, typical Matt, just focused, ready to rock and roll, taking over command, seamlessly took over command that night of the troop.
Yeah, that moment was a real turning point for the entire unit. It was not to say things hadn't been serious before, but it became more serious. It was, I don't know, reality sunk in even harder when during that. It just kind of changed the shape of everything.
And that was a crazy experience for me because my first tour was a lot of small contact, a lot of pop shots, sniper, quote unquote snipers, which was really just a guy just shooting at us. Some ambushes, some IEDs. My first tour, I think I had about 7 or 8 guys wounded from my platoon my first tour. And then it went to this where the enemy was standing and fighting, maneuvering on. Like one of the elements that maneuvered on our gun truck on our blocking position was like 30 guys, 20 guys, something like that, moving in wedge formations at us. And then, but also hearing, I think it was, I'm butchering his name, Jason Male. Male, yeah. Male, we were down the road on our blocking position, and I could hear when they got in that big ambush. And they were right down the road, and there was every ounce of me wanted to let's get down there and fuck. We could hear the radio traffic. Let's fucking charge down there, but we can't because we're doing this blocking position. And I felt very helpless because I could just hear the traffic. We'd hear the RPGs, hear the explosions, and we were right down the road, but we couldn't maneuver. We had to stay there, But that was very surprising with me, was to see how they stood and fought and would not just break contact. And
we ran into a bunch that in Turkey one day they were squirting away from the incident with Dennison and Schiller, and we ran into them, and it was the same. They weren't even retreating; they were just trying to do ambushes and actually maneuvering on people. It was that night. There was another platoon-sized element that came out of the trenches just to maneuver. It was tactics that people hadn't seen since the invasion. Like, it was kind of unexpected. You don't expect terrorists to maneuver. They pop and run. It was such a unique position. It was interesting what you were mentioning about Mail too. While I was watching some of my video clips that I'd stored, I hadn't watched those in years. And I noticed in the background of all of them, there's this constant machine gun fire everywhere in all of these clips, and I just reminded me that like everywhere you were, there was someone within a mile of you shooting, and who knows if it was us, if it was Iraqi police or whatever, but it was just surreal to it's one of those things I'd forgotten, where that kind of thing becomes background noise, and it's surreal to think, oh yeah, that was just happening all around. Someone was being ambushed within 1 or 2 miles of you at almost every day, and you weren't even. It just became commonplace. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And like I said, my first tour I had not seen that. And also I'm a
Hmm.
history nerd and read a
Hmm.
lot and stuff. Was going to school, like other than being a firefighter, I was going to getting a history degree.
Hmm.
But that's the number one rule of not to do as an insurgent is to stand and fight. You're supposed to only
Hmm.
fight when it suits you well. But just proved that they couldn't afford not to fight. That was their command and
Hmm.
control. That was a way station for supplies and jihadis heading to Baghdad, and like when it's your command and control, which we ended up seeing in Diyala as well. It's like you have to stand and fight because if you lose that area, you've lost that
Hmm.
entire network.
Yeah, it's I'm struggling to. There's information that I know out of Turkey, like names and things like that. Yeah, you're right, absolutely right. It was a command area. I don't know what we're allowed to talk about with certain things nowadays, some of the intel, but it was very much some of the big movers and shakers in a lot of the war had been out there, and they were using it as training or as an in between, like you were saying, a way station. You're bringing weapons in from Iran, which is surreal to me that you'd have Sunni Wahhabis that were getting resupplied from Iran, which is their mortal enemy, but everyone's fighting against the U.S. So, but yeah, I know it's a very important area, and just seeing that stand up fight come out of them was so surreal. Um, yeah, and then Turkey too. Shortly after that, um, so I'm trying to think of how to lead into Turkey too. How did you guys prepare for that? Because we knew we were going back. It was a short span of about a month in between. We did a bunch of air assault missions to try and push the enemy around and keep them locked into the area. What kind of guidance or what kind of planning did you have, knowing we were going to be going in for a larger assault in a short period of time?
So when that came out, we started doing the shaping operations for Turkey, which was to kind of put them in a box. That was our goal. So we started doing air assaults to the east, the west, and definitely south of them. And have a particular funny story. One of those shaping operations, we found a team. It was a family kind of group. They had a lot of heavy weapons, RPKs, RPGs, and and IEDs, landmines. And we actually got ditched by 25th ID on the objective, and there was only 12 of us left. And actually,
Mm,
160th SOAR came out and picked us up. They were, we didn't have enough assets, so we had to do kind of like a couple chalks the first time, a couple chalks the last time. Well, the last chalk was, about 12 of us with 12 Iraqi army, and then they started probing us, the enemy, and we got ditched. And of course, they're like, "Oh, sorry,
mm,
we can't come pick you up." And I remember like yelling at First Sergeant Cleb, was like, "Tell those assholes if they go another 3 miles, they'll break through the cloud cover. What the fuck are they
mm-hmm.
doing?" And then eventually, actually, 160th SOAR heard the whole thing go down and went to our S2 air guy and said, "Hey, do you guys need help?" And we got picked up by 160th
Mm.
after they had done a raid in Diyala somewhere,
Oh
and
wow.
got the ride with the doors out, feet dangling. It was pretty cool. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we did many shaping operations like that. We did, our aerial weapons teams took out some guys. We got some more intel and found, if I remember correctly, that they weren't leaving. And we actually
Mm-hmm.
found that they were preparing the battle space for defense, which we saw in Turkey Bowl 2, destroying bridges, putting double stack AT
Mm-hmm.
mines everywhere, um, making more trenches, and then also just doing anti tank trenches and Humvee trenches, try to funnel us into certain areas. And so our
Mm-hmm.
shaping operation showed that they were still there. They still were well armed. There were still caches we didn't find, and that so we were getting ready for Turkey Bowl 2. The training for Turkey Bowl 2 with my guys and the medics was number one. It was supposed to be a 5-day op, and it ended up turning
Mm-hmm.
into more of a 15 to 16-day op. But
Yeah.
I prepared them. We had extra medical supplies on all the trucks. They had their aid bag, resupply aid bag, and then their assault aid bags stocked up good. And then my resupply aid bag and my Humvee was huge, because I knew we were
Mm-hmm.
gonna treat many casualties, and I think we ended up treating 50 casualties that
Mm-hmm.
Turkey Bowl 2. Myself and Rather and the Bravo Troop medics
Mm-hmm.
had our, and then and so we were just prepped that way, and extra ammo, the whole 9 yards. And then the op kicked off. It was, a hammer and anvil tactics. So we had, elements from the other 505, I think, units were there, and also first Cav, and we set up a box around them. And then, of course, the Bravo troop, and I think Bravo troop and Charlie troop were one of the main elements heading south at the time. And then I think within 20 minutes of the operations, once we got to the staging area and the op started, we hit our first AT mine, which was Mike.
Yeah.
And treated our first casualties within 20 minutes of the operation started. So, and then it just progressed from there, clearing, not too much contact. If I remember, small arms, we were just hitting anti-tank mine after anti-tank mine after anti-tank mine. And then eventually had my biggest MCI of the deployment, which was like the third or fourth day of the operation, when a bongo truck ran over an AT mine. And we ended up having 35 wounded Iraqis and 5 dead on scene. And that was with Doc Harriman and myself, Brad Rather, and I believe it was Alpha Troops mortars were with them. So it was Donnie was there. Was there. We had my ATLS team at that time was actually Major Rather and also Ben Saban as part of my ATLS team. But when that went down and the first bongo truck hit an AT mine, Donnie said, hey, we need help. So First Sergeant Clemens, our gun truck, and then Doc Rather came down south. And right when I got there, I'm seeing just bodies everywhere. And Harriman doing how he's been trained and already experienced by this time. He's already dealt with several injuries. He's got his immediates in one area, his delayeds in another area, his minimums over here, and just gave me, I walked up, said, what do you got? And he said, I've got X number of serious, the immediates and X number of delays. And here we go. And we just started going to work, the 3 of us. And then I just looked at First Sergeant Clemens, who by that time was very well versed and has called in medevacs, and just said, hey, just keep the birds coming. We got over 30 patients. And we got the dust off birds from that place. I forget the name, FOB Normandy. The dust off, the main ones were out of there. And then we started getting some from Balad and Baghdad as well. So, and the birds just kept coming. And then we were just about to finish. I was loading up a patient, and then a second bongo truck came rolling around and hit another AT mine, and then we started taking some small arms fire. So, that grew from there, and then we ended up, finally, the firing stopped, and then got more casualties on the bird. And when it was all said and done, I think we treated 40 something patients.
Oof. Yeah, Turkey too was insane, and I know. Like we talk about the American side of it, the coalition side of it, but our Iraqi army augmentees. I know up with Alpha Troop, there was a moment when a bongo truck was pulling out for like a refuel resupply, and they hit another double AT mine, and they had like more than 20 were killed, and it was after the main push had happened. It's just even after you've taken the compound, the mines are still out there, and God, those guys they suffered horrific casualties. And I know like the Alpha Troop guys, I believe, responded to that one. But it's just, and that's another side of like the medic story that doesn't get told a lot in the war in general, is not just treating coalition troops, but the locals, the Iraqi army, the augmentees, all the other people that are with us. It's you guys. If they're bleeding, you take care of them, and it's yeah.
Yeah, and we even treated, the insurgents. The guys are trying to kill us, and I would always tell my guys, like, part of you just wants to fucking smoke them. But I would tell them, like, hey, this is training treat them like you would treat a regular guy, because this is training for when one of our guys gets hurt, And I used to make my guys, until Turkey Bowl 2, I'd make my guys write a quick memo of, like, their experience when they would treat casualties. And by the time we got Turkey Bowl 2, all of us had seen so many casualties by then, there was really no need to, polish the diamond. They were already doing amazing jobs and had that experience now. So, yeah, it is, you treat everyone on the battlefield, and it's really just practice for your guys as well. But also, you treat the insurgents, you get info off of them too, And then also the Iraqi army, a lot, our casualties were horrible. their casualties were much worse than us, and they were not well equipped, well trained, and sometimes I felt like they were almost like fodder out there, with those bongo trucks rolling around at AT mines and stuff like that, So, but yeah, Turkey Bull 2 for us at Bravo Troop was we treated a lot of casualties. I think we did 8 separate medevacs that one, but that's not counting the MCI we had, because that's counting them as one, because we had the birds came back, a dozen times for that one. But yeah, did a lot. We treated a lot of injuries that push. And
but in Turkey too. The statistics for it were even worse than I had realized. We took between 9 and I think 15 vehicles were completely destroyed from mines and ambushes going in. And I don't know what the end total on casualties was, all combined, but just that many vehicles having a minimum of 4 people per vehicle that were wounded. We were insanely lucky that we took as few casualties as we actually took.
Yeah, we were really lucky with that, because we didn't have any KIA other than the Iraqi army. That one, we did have. My memory is so long ago. I'm getting old, but I want to say of the 50-odd people I treated, maybe 12 were Americans. I know I was there for and kind of did the medevac for Godoy and Mendoza when they got wounded, because that was a weird period where Bravo and Alpha kind of met at this choke point kind of thing. We're all just kind of hanging out, and then Mendoza's vehicle hit an AT mine, and actually his bumper and his Alice pack almost hit me. I was that close to, and then ran down there, actually I was the first to get there and drug Mendoza out of the truck, his truck, when he was hit. And then Godoy was also hit. And I remember dragging him, and, he's a stocky guy. He's a lot heavier than he looks, And I remember like going, man, and I'm kind of like, help me, bro. I need your help. So I'm dragging you by myself, but his legs were broken. And then I think maybe Black came and helped me through that, because we went back into the minefield, and he came in to help me drag him out. And then a couple other guys were wounded too. And and then we of course called a medevac for that. And I kind of we had so many medics on that one. It was actually the reverse of normal, because we had all the Alpha Troop medics there, their ATLS team, all the Bravo Troop medics, our ATLS team. So that one actually, after kind of helping during what I like to call the hot minute, where I'm like bandaging, I got to step back, start packaging them up, who's going first and what bird, and me and First Sergeant Clemens and Matheny, because he was there, kind of say, okay, these 4 are going on this bird, these 4 are going on this bird, and so on and so forth. And it was the only time I think we had too many medics on scene. And there's video of that too. And I have a lot of friends that are in JSOC, Special Forces, Ranger Regiment. They have video of that, and they use that in their training.
Oh, wow. I would love to see that video. I would love to see that. Yeah.
It's and I remember my friend, his name's Eric Starr. He's a sergeant major at 3rd Group now. We were friends since basic. I went to the 82nd. He went to Ranger Regiment, and now he's SF. He was actually, and he was 18 Delta. He was like, yeah, I was, in the getting a refresher, and I saw, that's my fucking friend Marc in the 82nd. And they showed the whole video eating those Alpha Troop casualties, and they use that in the SOMC at the schoolhouse.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that whole incident was surreal. The Alpha Troop medics were in the back of my Bradley. We were acting as fire support and then medic support for Alpha Troop, and so we were responding to that as well. But I just remember Mendoza. I was stuck in the Bradley, and so I was listening to Keeley. He was out the top, just being like over the radio, like, "Oh, Mendoza's dead," and they're pulling him out. He's dead, and I was like, I couldn't see anything, but we're buddies, and I'm just like, what is going on? But unfortunately, he was not. But but I was always a little bit angry at him, because they had borrowed my gun truck, and then we got the Bradley, so he blew up my truck. I've never forgiven him for that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, it was kind of surreal, because like when he ran into the AT mine, and I remember I yelled at my my driver, because the Bravo 7 vehicle, Wallbauer, started driving off. And if I was ever 20 feet away from my Humvee, that was my rule. My aid bag comes onto my back. If I'm within 20 feet, that's fine. So I was within 20 feet, and he takes off in the Humvee because he got confused and was following this other Humvee. So I actually didn't have my aid bag. I did keep I had a saw pouch, which I had a lot of ace bandages and wraps in there, and could treat probably 4 or 5 casualties, bleeding control. But the rest of my stuff was now a couple of 100 feet away in my Humvee. And so when the explosion happened, like I said, the Alice pack flew up, and it was surreal because it dropped like right in front of me, and then a piece of bumper flew by me. And I was like, I remember yelling at First Sergeant Clemens, I go, "You tell that motherfucker, Wallbauer, bring my fucking aid bag to me." And then I just ran, and then I was the whole time I'm cursing, like, he took off without my aid bag. I'm so fucking pissed. He's way down there now. But I still had, bleeding control. But yeah, so it was an interesting. And I have video of the medevac too. Some guys took video of that, so you can see me running out and talking to the flight medics, and and packaging them up, and a couple guys went in one bird, a couple guys went in the other bird. So, but
yeah, that situation was surreal because where those mines had been, they were kind of near a crossroad. I know my Bradley had been over them at least once. The Bravo Blue Platoon Bradley had been over it once, and then that truck was like third behind, and so they'd been doing delayed mines, and so we didn't realize that at the time. But yeah, you'd had 2 armored vehicles go over an anti-tank mine without triggering it until that vehicle finally pulled up. And one thing that a lot of people don't talk about, or maybe don't realize, is the way they had stacked those mines. There would often be secondaries in the area. So when you would do a medic response to it, or everyone would get around to do the recovery, there was a really big danger of being hit by a secondary mine or ambush. But what do? You can't just stop and wait for EOD to clear it. You have casualties and the job to take care of.
And that was one of the things I really reiterated to them, because that was something we saw on my first tour. We had a couple our EOD guys and girls taken out by secondaries. We do not treat at point of injury. We try to get them out. So that particular instance was a good example. Was I actually, a couple of the other casualties were getting treated close to that crossroads area, and I said, stop all treatment, follow me. Me and Black are still dragging Mendoza. Let's go into this road and this canal where the possibilities of secondary being there are next to none. And so that's, and they all kind of looked up, and they followed suit and brought their casualties there. So that was a big pet peeve of mine, was to always maneuver casualties out and move them into the fields and away from the roads and stuff like that. Find cover into a canal or something like that if you can, or a ditch. So that was very important, because yes, the secondaries were big on taking out, especially the medics and the people responding.
Yeah. So I guess following Turkey 2, started up into the spring, we started doing more reconnaissance into the Diyala River Valley, set up the Asada patrol base. There was Turkey village patrol base. And we started kind of shaping operations for what would become Arrowhead Ripper in Tacuba. But we started to run into a lot of resistance, especially in the smaller towns. I know it's still difficult to talk about, so if you don't want to, that's cool. Like the incidents with the car bombing that killed Ben Saban, the Asada bombing that happened later. Those were your troops and your guys. I don't know if that's something you want to talk about or not. I definitely do just like to highlight like the heroism that came out of that, and how much effort people put into recovery and helping with the casualties and all that. But yeah.
Yeah, I know once Turkey Bowl 2 was ended, you guys kind of, when I'm saying you guys, the rest of the squadron went back to Caldwell, and then I don't particularly know what you guys did before moving into the Diyala River Valley, but Bravo Troop was, of course, down in Turkey Village. And we were doing just sustainment ops of making sure they would not come back, because we were worried about the whack-a-mole, they'll pop out. So we were getting the stragglers that were left out of there. And then also doing, operations into Diyala. We would use Turkey as our HLZ to fly to Diyala, help you guys out, fly back to Turkey Village. So the first, St. Patrick's Day when Ben was killed was a particularly hard day for me, because Ben was the senior line medic. Ben was a great buffer between the aid station and the line dogs, keeping the aid station bullshit kind of to the minimum and try to be that stopgap from issues at the aid station. He was about to get picked up for E7. He was very, very respected, even by me, who was like already combat experienced guy, and this was his first deployment. He's very squared away, very intelligent, and just an easy guy to get along with. And he was one of those leaders that you just wanted to do good from him, not because you were afraid of him, just because you respected him. And very competent. That was the thing, very competent. So when that first went down, it was actually First Sergeant Clemens grabbed me aside. And he was like, then we went outside into like this courtyard where our mortars were, and that's when he told me Ben had been killed. And also that dozens of the other Charlie Troop guys had been wounded, which not only losing Ben, but most of the Charlie Troop guys were 3505 guys. So those infantry guys were the guys that I knew very, very well. And also having Charlie Red there, also that's their guys as well. But also to know that my first platoon was there, Bravo Red, first Sergeant, Sergeant Major Cobb's unit, which was my guy. So I'm like, oh God, who's hit, who's hurt? I knew everyone. And that was one thing that was great about 573. We all knew each other. It's not like that.
Yes.
Like 3505 is an amazing unit. I had so many friends in that, but I didn't know 70% of the guys because it's just a big unit, Yeah. We were 300 guys. I knew guys in Alpha, Charlie, Bravo, So you just kind of in your head like, okay, Ben's dead. That's horrible. And having to tell my guys, I got all the medics by themselves and said, don't tell anyone yet, but Ben's dead. Was hard because he was very, very popular and respected. And then later on finding out, who else was hit, and I don't know if Austin was hit at that time, but there were a lot of friends of mine that were wounded on that one. So, yeah, and it was just kind of feeling helpless that far away, That was another thing about this tour that was much different. My first tour was just how spread out we were, right? It was massive. So, yeah, and we just kind of like, oh, well, he was going to be our platoon sergeant. Now we don't know what's going to happen, who's going to take over, is Woodruff going to stay? And what's happened to the rest of the guys, And it hit the platoon, the medic platoon, that hit us really hard. And then, towards the end, we had 2 killed and like several wounded. The medic platoon was pretty decimated and really tired. And we had lost a couple guys to mental health issues too. And by the end of that tour, we were pretty spent as a platoon.
Yeah, we definitely saw that over on our end as well. I know I like Ryan Kavanaugh. He was my line medic. Timmy Tolliver was over with us. It's tough, especially for you guys being so tight knit, but also having so much responsibility. It's not just your safety; it's everyone's safety. And like you were saying, it was a unique unit. Being so close, especially being so small, like as SADA, most of those guys I know for 2 years for training before we even separated into units. So even though it was Bravo Troop, I knew almost everyone that was killed there because, barracks are training time and everyone was just closer in a way that I haven't experienced in the second, other places I've gone. But yeah.
It kind of showed that, Ben's heroism, like getting out and warning everyone, and I mean, I don't know a better example of how a combat medic is than that. You know what I mean? And it's a big responsibility to be a medic, and he was, one of the better of us, Yeah, he was probably the best of us because not only with his experience and his intelligence, but just like his demeanor, he was very even keeled and nothing seemed to really bother him, But yeah, that was the first, and then the second bombing, we're still in, our Turkey Village patrol base, and when that second one in, that was my second platoon. So Bravo second platoon went to the SADA patrol base to just give them relief because unlike ours, they had to set up checkpoints. They were kind of in Indian country. For us, it was really just patrolling, doing raids here and there, and then coming over to help you guys. Our area was pretty quiet, and the IEDs were next to nothing. The enemy was pretty destroyed. So it was really kind of nice for us just to fly out, do some air assaults in Diyala River Valley, come back, chill, maybe do a few raids around our area. But so we gave second platoon up to the patrol base to give them some rotation, and that's when the second bombing happened. And once again, they pulled me aside, and it was Captain Dobbins and First Sergeant Clemens, and they showed me the I forget what they called it. It was like an email that we had over there, and it said these guys are missing and these guys are dead. The couple that were already confirmed dead were the ones that they flew out right away. And I looked at them and I go, well, those guys who are missing are either nothing's left of them or they're under rubble and they're not going to survive. So I knew right off the bat that they had all died, which was particularly hard for me because Sergeant Moore, Clint Moore, was a really close friend of mine. He was probably one of my first friends of you cavalry weirdos that I had, and yeah, it hit hard. And I ended up driving his vehicle back too from Masada. So that was a tough one. And then, of course, losing Noel was a brand new medic. I barely got to know him. He was with me for maybe 2 weeks before they left out. And I got there the next day after everyone had been already dug out of the rubble. They wouldn't let me go to the patrol base, so I was stuck at Warhorse. And then, just when we finally got there, I just wanted to see my guys, and I think I just ran to Sergeant Lilly when I saw him and the survivors, and then double checked them. A couple of them were wounded and didn't tell anyone, so it wasn't they were treated till a few days later. So there were a few of them that had injuries that they just didn't tell anyone. So, and then we did the hero flight, obviously, and and then we knew kind of that number one, that patrol base wasn't going to get closed down, and that's also when Set Bravo Troop ended up being moved back to Warhorse to start helping out.
Yeah, that situation. Ours was similar over an Alpha Troop. We were on patrol when it was hit, and we'd have we've been using a vehicle to open up gates and check on safe houses, and one of the drivers had broken off a wheel, so the axle was broken and the vehicle was unable to move, so we were unable to respond. And put in that situation, just listening over the radios, they would call up the battle roster numbers and just be trying to guess at each person. And it's such a weird situation to be in, because on the one hand, I would have liked to have responded, just to be there to respond, but on the other hand, also, I don't know if maybe it's better that I didn't. It's that it puts you into that weird position of, there were incidences that I did respond to, and like you as well, there's so many people that you worked on and saved, but also then you remember the times when you weren't able to as well. It's I don't know, it's something I still don't really have words about.
Yeah, it's a hard pill for me to swallow, not being there. Medics are almost like the mama bears, like these are your kids kind of thing. And rank really has nothing to do with it. I was as close to the senior leadership as much as the loneliest private, and every single rank has sat and talked to me and opened up to me, So yeah, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. I probably take it as more of a blessing not to see the state that they were in, especially since they were my responsibility. And so, and obviously, with Marshall and even, Locker, some of the guys they had already been wounded a couple times before that.
Yeah.
So, and I'd already treated them, And so it was, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. You want to be there, and I'm type of the person that wants to be where the metal meets to meet, but maybe in the long run, it was probably best that I wasn't there, I would be there in a heartbeat, but it's just kind of how it happened.
Oh, no, what you were just saying too about how so many of them had been previously wounded or had been wounded and hit it to return to line. That's just something that I want to double tap on and make sure that people really do know and hear. The way people stood up and stayed with their units, came back to the line, stayed in the fight, just to be next to your brothers, to not give up, to not go back to be wounded. I know Mendoza, as wounded as he was, broken jaw and all that, he fought hard to come back. They were going to keep him on rear D, and he made sure that he could come back to the fight as soon as he was able. And there's a lot of those quiet little stories that have never been told about that. I didn't know there was a lot of guys who had been wounded, but just didn't say anything, so that way they could stay in the fight. And it's something that I really like to reiterate for people that watch, just to know how much effort and heart people put into it.
Star Lore's one. He was severely wounded that first IED, the first couple months we were there. He came back towards the end of the deployment, fought really hard to get back towards the end of the deployment. Sergeant Lilly, Sergeant Major Lilly, wounded Turkey Bull 1, severely wounded, would not he would not let them evac him to Germany and stateside. So he actually recovered in Kuwait or Qatar and then came back a few months later. He still had fresh wounds when he came back, so he's another example of a guy that just flat out refused to even get, evac'd out of the theater. Henry Young was wounded during those Asada missions, got patched up, stayed in the fight, even though one of his plates was shot up and he got clipped in the neck, a couple of the Bravo Troop guys had, shrapnel injuries and stuff like that, and didn't tell me until days later, and then had to treat them, and, and then ended up getting their Purple Hearts, so that is a very common thing that happened in our unit. Those are a few examples of the guys. I think Tempe was one of them that was wounded that didn't tell anyone until days later. He had injuries in his legs.
Yeah, it was just a remarkable time, remarkable people. Like I don't know, it's cliche to say that I never served with better people, but honestly, it was just that's why I love telling these stories, because the more I come out, the more you realize just how remarkable everyone was in the situation, everything that came together was.
And we were lucky. Yeah, it was just a unique group of people, a unique type of unit, and very close. And I've always been proud that I've noticed that guys in our unit who have stayed in, who have done great things, between being a 4-star general, 2-star generals, colonels, theater sergeant majors. We've had a couple of those, Matheny and Clemens, Brigade, Division sergeant majors. When you notice that whenever they are retiring or leaving a unit to go to another unit, even the guys that went into special operations, Ranger Regiment, Special Forces, had some guys go to Delta. When they retire or leaving their units, they always bring up this unit. People don't do that. People don't randomly leaving SF or 25th ID or 1st Cav, and they're retiring and going to another unit. They bring up, no one there knows us, but they'll bring up, hey, I just want to thank everyone from 573. And it's like, that does not happen, And guys that have even gone to these very Gucci high-speed units will tell you that they would still go to combat with this unit tomorrow if they had to. That's pretty special,
Yeah, it's lightning in a bottle. I don't want to say too much of it yet because I haven't recorded the interviews yet. I'm still working on them, but I started reaching out when we were doing the original project, just for historical purposes. I wanted to put together some more high-level discussion about how things were organized or the view from the top. And I reached out to a bunch of high-level officers, and so far both both General Petraeus and General William Caldwell have gotten back to me with interest about discussing 573. It's insane to me to think that it carries that kind of work where people are like, yeah, I want to talk about them. It's just, there's something special, and it's still difficult to articulate, and that's why I love doing these interviews, because the more I hear stuff that I didn't know from you all, and it just builds a bigger picture of everything. So
and it just tells you too, is look how many sergeant majors and senior come out of this unit. Such a small unit. It's crazy, Yeah,
I at the last reunion deactivation, I was talking to Stephen Pavlik about it, and he's saying, essentially 573 right now kind of is running the Army. It's like, if you look at who is where, the biggest units, the highest ranks, that's kind of what's going on. And it's just, it's surreal to me to have ended up in a place like that just on accident, and like I could barely do pull-ups and I could barely run. And I don't know how the Army chose to stick me there, but what came out of it was just phenomenal. And I, I don't know, it's still stories that need to be told, I think.
Yeah.
So how? Oh, sorry, I just wanted to move on real quick. How did you incorporate lessons from 573 in Iraq into your greater life, and how's it helped you with your career since then?
I use a lot in the fire service, especially because the civilian world's way far behind, especially trauma wise, than the Army. So when I got picked up to be a firefighter with LA County Fire, it was a pretty easy transition to the fire service. It's very paramilitary. It's similar to the military. It's not the same, but it's just as close as you get. You do live with these guys and you're out there, you are risking your life and stuff like that, but it's nothing compared to the military, don't get me wrong, but I've definitely incorporated the leadership, being that I was a senior medic, and leadership role of like always leading from the front. I'm a senior firefighter now. We're a particularly young department. We had a lot of guys retire. We're also a massive department, 175 stations, huge area. We're one of the largest in the world, but I try to put myself kind of how First Sergeant Clemens always did, was put yourself in a point of friction on a fire or a multi-casualty incident, and help keep the mission going along. And I definitely do lead these younger guys by the front when we do go into fires. We get a lot of big brush fires out here too. So I find myself, even not off duty, a lot of us will go out in our own trucks and shovels and go out into the country and out into our areas when we have these big brush fires. So the leadership lessons of basically leading from the front. No one's too good to be out there, in where the metal meets the meat, and that's what I'm going to try to incorporate when I become a captain, is kind of, that's a big thing I see now with some of the new leadership in my department, is they lead from the rear. They're kind of like, oh, whatever. But, if there's a fire, you got to be on that hose line with your guys going in. So that's the biggest thing that I try to bring into. And also training too. I'm big on training the new guys, like, let's not be lazy. Let's go out and train. Let's pull some hose and things like that. And, I worked South Central and Inglewood and Lenox. We get a lot of shootings, a lot. So that trauma experience has come in, very handy. I've been on 13 years. I've probably run 20,000 something runs in 13 years and hundreds and hundreds of traumas. So that experience has been, gold, my military experience. And nothing in the fire service, other than maybe dealing with, homicides with kids or, which I've dealt with and had one not a few days ago too. There hasn't really been anything as bad as what we dealt with in Iraq, but it's been invaluable. And I know my wife feels a lot more comfortable with me because of my experience in the Army. She feels a lot more comfortable when I'm, down in Watts, and she feels a lot more comfortable. She's like, well, you survived 2 tours of Iraq and you know how to do it. And, and it comes in handy, we have to fight patients, and we've taken guns and knives off patients. I've been attacked, out front of the fire. And so definitely a little hand-to-hand combat, a little choking out, little arm bars have come in handy, but taking guns off patients. I've had knives to pull on me, and that all happens now.
It's still crazy to me that like aid workers have to be aware. I mean, I guess it makes sense, especially with drugs and mental illness and all that. But it's always insane to me that you guys would be targeted, or attacked. It's like, but it's also great.
Oh, go on.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Oh no, I was just gonna say I think it's great that like Iraq and all the training we did as kids, God, like is going on and still saving lives and influencing lives down the line with your career. It's like how many people have had a good successful life after because of your influence that has come from your experiences in Iraq and the military.
Yeah, and it was the hardest decision of my life was to get out. I almost stayed in. I had some pretty amazing job offers to stay in. But I ended up getting out, but I felt comfortable getting out because I was going to continue to serve my country as a firefighter and use that experience in Iraq in a positive way towards the civilian side of things, you know? So, yeah. And it's kind of sad to say, you know, most of the medics didn't do medical stuff afterwards. A lot of them were kind of sick of being doctors. You look at very few of us are still in the medical field. A lot of them just kind of are doing other things. So it was, but my experience as a medic has been valuable in helping down in LA, you know?
Oh yeah. And that's an area with such a great need too. It's, you know, we see it up here in Seattle as economic things, downturn happens, there's more and more need on the streets. And it's difficult to deal with. It's good that someone has experience, you know, can. I don't know if you do want to talk about it or not. How's your mental, emotional health been from Iraq and dealing with other stuff? And what ways have you found for coping, or do you have anything you'd like to talk about with that for someone who may be struggling?
I definitely, I was very lucky. When I got out, I had saved up all my money for my deployments. I didn't buy Corvettes or sound systems for barracks. So I had a huge chunk of change. And then with the GI Bill and everything, I was able not to work for about 3 years. I went to school full time and did a lot of traveling. But that was such a good for my mental health not to have to dive right in. And pretty much about 2 years after getting out, I got my letter for LA County Fire saying you're hired, and then pretty much was working the field about around my 3rd year out. So I was lucky in that aspect. And to move back to California, to Ventura, you know, by the beach, and just not have that responsibility, and having that money I'd saved and the GI Bill really helped me mentally. It was hard those first 2 years. I did not sleep at all. I was up all night, you know, had an issue. I was partying a lot. But I think about 2 years in, I stopped drinking, stopped really partying, and was really, by that time, you know, got hired by LA County Fire and then started that career. And by that time I was, you know, the PTSD will always be there. And I think one of the great things, probably the only great thing about social media nowadays, is still being in contact with you guys. And I still do talk to you guys from both my deployments, and just talk about it. It's not a dirty little secret. Talk about it. If you have issues, get help, you know? And so I do have some residual, but as I get older, and I really would have to probably thank my wife, Trisha, has really helped me through all this. And we've been together 13 years. So she's been a great help with my mental health. And, you know, because she's a communicator, she's all about, you know, talking and working through things, has definitely helped me out quite a bit. And guys see me now and they're like, you've changed, you know, and so my wife, you know, I'm different than the Marc that everyone probably kind of remembers back at Bragg, you know?
Yeah, but growing is a good thing. That's part of becoming an adult, right? Is growing.
Yeah. And it's been great. And I've been so lucky, you know, to have met my wife right when I got hired with the fire department, and meeting her after I'd been out for a couple years. So I'd kind of gone through the worst of it. And then, but yeah, being a father, a husband, and a firefighter, and just knowing that you got to leave stuff behind and kind of move forward. I think that was the biggest thing, is you just can't, for me personally, I just can't linger on it, you know?
Yeah.
We were all kids. War is a series of mistakes, and we're all just trying to survive and trying to do the best we can in these horrible situations, you know? There's a little bit of forgiveness, you know, you got to kind of forgive yourself. I know survivor guilt was a huge, you have to forgive yourself for surviving and not getting hurt. You have to forgive, you know, sometimes you might have to forgive your leadership. Maybe mistakes were made, but at the end of the day, we were all just trying to do our best and just get the fuck out of that place alive, you know?
That's another reason I love doing these interviews is the more I hear, the more I realize how much I didn't know at the time. And so things that I may have been angry about at the moment, I didn't know the full picture. You know, I only knew what was in my tunnel vision, and hearing the larger story, it helps my own mental health, because I go, oh, you know, I can let go of that because that wasn't intentional. That was, you know, everyone was doing the best they could with what they had at the time. and myself included. So, like you said, it gives me permission to like forgive myself for things that I would have wanted to do differently. Um, yeah, and I do want to double tap on the GI Bill. I know it's been changed recently. When I had it, it was changed right in the middle. But I saw so many veterans where having that ability to go to school and have the funding and not have all the pressure of the rest, it acted as a buffer zone where it gave you time to decompress for up to 4 years to just learn who you are as a human being again in a new context while learning how to learn and grow again. And I just always really, really thought the GI Bill was an amazing entitlement that we have, not just for the education, but for also reintegration purposes, giving you time to space after the Army and learn how to be a normal person again.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It definitely helped me, and I think all the benefits, the unknown benefits, not just, your disability, but also benefits for your family. Like, in California, my daughter is going to go to college for free, which is pretty amazing. The Army uses you, and I tell, guys are telling me, oh, I'm joining the Army. What should I do? And I go, hey, they're going to use you, but use them and find everything you do. But the GI Bill was great. That helped me get this job as a fireman and in California, which is a great gig, but yeah, it was such a buffer because unlike previous wars, we flew from combat back home. You're out. Back in the day, they would have a 3, 4, 5, 6 months before they got home. So there was like a transition period. I was a stop loss. I actually extended for several months because I thought I was going to possibly stay in. So there was a buffer for me. A lot of the stop loss guys got out pretty immediately around November, December. I didn't get out till February or March because, like I said, I got a couple offers on the stock side to go over there. And so I had to really think about it. So I extended, and Captain Kinnery was very supportive of that. And so was Lieutenant Hesterman and the aid station. So they kind of left me alone. And I was, for about 5 months, was just debating and filling out paperwork to possibly stay in. And but then when I decided not to, I ended up getting out a little later. So I did have that buffer, which was nice, So, but not everyone does that. And that's why, especially with my department, I did veteran recruitment for several years where I'd go out to military bases and recruit guys to become firemen. It was very healing too, was to help guys get meaningful employment and also to continue the mission. That's one thing I'll tell guys is find a mission and continue to do it. No matter if it's your job or a hobby. I think we are all mission set type of people. And the guys that just don't do anything are the ones that have a lot of trouble. So find something and make that your mission. For me, it's of course my family, but also, being a firefighter has been a continuation,
I think that's an incredibly important statement right there. I know I experienced it when I had the physical issues that led me not have the mission that I wanted to do. That's when I got lost because I didn't know what to do. I didn't have that hierarchy, I didn't have that thing to focus on and push for. And it's another thing that I hear veterans say over and over again is I miss being there because I had a mission. I knew what I was doing, had a purpose. And it's fine. You can find a new one. You have to find a new one, find something to do, and then go and work at it and do it. It's a really important thing. Also the mentorship part too. Just like you were saying, I touched a key and I want to make sure, are we still, okay, we're still recording. I want to make sure we didn't just end it. The mentorship aspect as well, like you were talking about recruiting other people into firefighting. That's another thing. I don't know if you've experienced anything with that in your own career, but I know mentoring people has helped a lot of veterans. It's something about the process of, again, it's growth, going from being the person who's learning, then doing, and then sharing what you've done. Just, it does seem to help seat you as a human being, I guess.
Yeah. And that's pretty much firefighting 101 is you mentor and you bring these new guys up because, you get trained in the fire academy. That's like 1% of what you're going to do out in the real world. So you have to mentor and you have to train. And also doing the veteran recruitment, I helped dozens of people get hired, not just with LA County Fire, but with San Diego, LA City, San Francisco, and have continued to keep in contact with me, which has been great, but yeah, mentoring and also teaching, I've had a few offers to teach, but I might start teaching with Brad Rather, tactical medicine and stuff like that. Me and Austin might start doing that because Austin's a cop down in Downey, California, far from where I work. So there's that aspect of it. And just, mentoring these new firefighters has been a great help. I'm at my station, we have a lot of new firefighters. So I'm just trying to relay as much experience, military and fire, to them before I'm, heading off to my next assignment here, hopefully soon, if I pass the captain's test. My days in the hood are numbered. I'm done. I'm probably going to head up to our brush areas and start doing some more brush stuff. But try to just pass the knowledge, and you'll see it. I've been back at Bragg and I've had guys I had no idea that, like, oh, we heard about you or heard about Harriman or heard about Rather or these other medics. And, oh, we trained this thing, or we've heard stories about you guys, or our medics trained this way because of something that happened at to Alpha Troop or Bravo or Charlie. And I thought that was really cool. I'm like, wow, and even seeing my buddy Eric, who taught at the schoolhouse for a while. Oh, I see video. We use videos of you guys. I'm like, wow, okay, pretty fucking cool,
No, that's really cool. Yeah. I like to ask where I haven't been. I should be asking. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on, or anything that you think that I should have asked? Anything you wanted to talk about?
No, not really. No, I think there's nothing that I would particularly want to talk about that you haven't already asked. I think this is really cool for especially the guys that weren't in leadership roles. You guys kind of hear like the process about what we were doing. Being a medic, you're in the know, even though you're such a lower rank. Like you're at the rock, you're an E5 or E4. You're briefing people that are higher ranking than you. So you kind of are in the know because, especially a senior medic, because you're talking to the sergeant major, you're talking to, Colonel Pappas at the time, you're, First Sergeant Clemens, Captain Dobbins, you're in there and you kind of see like, oh, this makes more sense than maybe for you guys that were just, the ground pounders on the ground. So I think this is great to see, but also just to hear everyone's story. Everyone has a little different story and we're all getting old, so it's good, to see this and kind of hear like what happened from this person's point of view. Cause this was a special unit, It's pretty crazy, even General Pappas still talks about it and he's the Force Comm commander. That's pretty impressive,
How wild is it? Like, I guess I'm still processing. How wild is it that, like, here we are like 17 years later and you're going to a barbecue at a 4-star general's house, because they still have that relationship from that unit, that time together. It just, to me, it's wild. It's like, I wouldn't have expected this, back in, 03 when I signed my papers.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I've just been crazy proud of all of us, you know what I mean? And to see, everyone's had their own struggles. Some have done better than others, but just proud, like we all come back together and it's just the same bunch of dipshit kids, Like I hadn't seen Austin since before he got wounded, and then one day I was working overtime in Norwalk, at Station 20, and I just sent him a random text like, are you working today? Because he's a Downey cop. And he's like, yeah, and we just met up. And I hadn't seen him since he got like a month before he got wounded. And it was like nothing had changed, like we're back on our dance, and it's I think the reunions have been great, I can hear your train in the back.
Oh, no, I know. No, I was just thinking the deactivation was exactly like that. It was, we're all in our 40s or older now, and like you get back with everyone, and it's just it's immediate. It just feels like I'm 24. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's been cool too. It's like I've had a few people have come visit me when they're running through California for whatever. They've stayed with me, and it's like it's a definitely we're a unique group of people. I'm still the closest is with the people I served in the military with. My civilian friends are kind of like, well, whatever, I don't. They're just placeholders compared to the rest. So I really enjoyed it. I wish I could have been there for the deactivation.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't make it, but I heard great things. But all the reunions have been really fun. So hopefully we have one here soon. I can make the next one, I promise, you know.
Perfect. Yeah, I think there's because 20 years should be coming up, so I think we should be doing something for a 20-year pretty soon. And I'm hoping with these interviews, my big hope is that maybe it'll spark something else too, like I don't know, another book or a redrafting or like documentary, something else that comes out of it that someone who is more creative than I am can take over with it. But yeah, I love hearing the stories, and I love keeping the stories alive. You know, and like you said, every person has a different story and a different take. And just talking to you today, I've heard so much that I'd never heard before. That it just blows my mind because again, I'm like, you realize how much each individual person gave, and everyone did it quietly. They didn't really talk about it. No one goes and brags about it at home. So it's up to someone else to brag for them. You know.
Yeah. It was kind of it was interesting because like our unit was so special. I remember I was in some briefing, we were doing some rock drill, and I remember like a general spoke and he was like, you know, all these units are crying for more soldiers, and 573 is only crying for more air assets, and there's only 300.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's so refreshing to a unit's been given. This is when we're clearing out the Diyala River Valley. It's like, you guys are 300 dudes and you're just asking for more air, more helicopters, you know, and that's so unique. And also I've seen other documentaries too, and tap into like leadership and leading by example. Is this unit was the 25th ID unit. They were around the same time we were there. They're actually the same time we were there. I remember this battalion commander's up front talking to his troops, and he's like, none of you guys can shape the battlefield. None of you guys can do anything positive for the battlefield. You can only do something negative. He's talking about, you know, like possibly smoking a person, helping the insurgents get some, you know, propaganda. But he was basically saying, like, none of you guys can help out. You can only hurt. Then I remember our leadership was like, from the lonely private E5, you guys can this battle. You guys are the guys that are up front. You guys are going to be the one that dictates the flow of this operation and the success of this operation. You guys are doing a great job. And yes, the loneliest E5 sergeant with his team going through a door can reshape the entire battlefield a positive direction. It was a complete opposite of here, two different units and two different leadership styles. When you think about
it would be incredibly demoralizing to hear that speech from someone. I hope you can hear me, but yeah, no, just hearing someone say that off the bat as a junior enlisted, I would immediately not try. It would be in my mind that nothing I do, like, okay, I can't make a difference. I'm just going to do my job and hide and go home. But and I always credit it being being an airborne, you know, a paratrooper unit, because that's what you train for. Is every person needs to know at least two jobs above you to do it, because you never know who you're going to have on the ground. And even in this day and age, when people say we're never going to do a divisional jump like World War II again, it doesn't matter. That training comes across to at every level. You know, I was E3, and I would have people ask my opinion about things, and it's like, you know, who am I? But also, you are there. You do have a chance. Like, every single soldier from the top to the bottom makes or breaks a unit, and how you act, and like your motivation level will carry you. You know, far beyond anything else. Your motivational level, and just that'd be wild to me to hear someone say, you know, all you can do is negative. Like, no, if you tell your soldiers that they are empowered and that they will, you know, that if you have trained me well enough as a soldier, it doesn't matter what my rank is, I can do what you will need me to do, and that will be a positive effect on the battlefield. That's the way I put it.
Yeah,
you know, it comes from leadership.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, and also I think it's something about, you know, mid-force, you know, that's a term in the airborne we have, where it's like, if the objective's a platoon objective, you only wait till you have a squad in 1-240 and you go do that. And that translated on our battlefield, when everyone else is crying in the whole area for more troops. We're like, well, that's probably a brigade objective, but we'll take care of it with a squadron or a battalion, you know. And we're not, I think the airborne, what makes us so elite is our willingness to work in small teams, especially counterinsurgency or low intensity conflict. That's
Hmm.
the only way you're really going to get a fight, is working in these smaller teams. And 573 is a prime example of that. You know, the insurgency ain't going to fight a brigade of tanks and, Humvees coming through their area, but they'll fight 50 guys on their feet, So, yeah, I think, and people always say that, oh, the airborne's, antiquated, they'll never do jumps.
Hmm.
Absolutely, they'll still do jumps someday. Will we
Hmm.
do a division size jump? Probably not, but battalion, regiment, yeah.
Hmm.
And the aspect that we can jump, fly, walk, or throw us in Humvees or Bradleys. No other units feels as
Hmm.
comfortable as us doing anything. It was
Yeah.
shocking that no one was using air assets as much as we were, and also
Yeah.
no one was willing to walk. That was another thing.
Hmm.
I like to make fun of the Cav Scouts, death before dismount, but no, that's not. But we walked. We did objectives
Hmm.
where we walked. We did raids
Yeah.
where we, you know,
Hmm.
and so that's why the airborne will never go away. And there'll
Hmm.
always be that need for a type of unit like this.
That was another interesting aspect too, was that even with that motivation, I didn't really see anyone that was out like glory hounding. It wasn't like we're going to do this for the recognition of it. It was just getting the job done. I don't know. It was just a really unique experience. People seem to work really well together, and at every level, like yeah, you would grumble about things. Everyone bitches. Like soldiers aren't happy if they're not bitching, but also like it didn't mean it didn't get done. Like,
Yeah. Well, the old saying, if a soldier stops bitching, you really need to worry about him. So of
mm-hmm,
course we bitched. I was a bitcher and a half for sure.
mm-hmm,
But we got this
yeah,
stuff. We got it done.
mm-hmm,
And the tightness of the unit really showed in combat too. Where guys were risking their lives to help each other,
mm-hmm,
for as decorated this unit was, it probably twice as many medals should have been turned out. You
mm-hmm,
could probably do an argument that we probably should have got two presidential unit citations, one for Turkey and one for Diyala.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
there's also arguments for other units, like even troop level awards
Mm-hmm,
for all three of them, four, five of them,
mm-hmm.
Deco,
Oh yeah.
and so I kind of laugh when I do read, the medal system in the Army is broken. We can say that, but I think the true awards is just us talking about the bravery of,
Yeah.
you know, of Harriman, rather.
Yeah.
The medics as a whole was very impressive. But, Lily, the COs, first
Mm-hmm.
sergeants, you name them. Our Delta company guys don't get half as much recognition as they do.
Oh yeah.
Much
I
rather
I've had.
assaulted with 12 guys or a small kill
Mm-hmm,
team with frame and four other guys walking around
mm-hmm,
than running those supply convoys through to those bases. I think there's a lot of people that did not get the recognition they should, but they will always be grateful in my eyes to them, to
mm-hmm.
all those guys.
What I loved about things too was so many of the stories that have come out of Iraq right now, and it seems like it's vogue in media that if you're going to talk about Iraq, they have to be these negative stories. It's always it's kind of how the Vietnam War ended. You're not allowed to be heroic about it. It's all formatted as, oh, this was a terrible thing and nothing good came of it, and we're so sorry. And I like being the counter to that. And what I noticed was the motivation in 573 was infectious, where when we would get other people attached to us, you would find out the mettle of those people really quickly. You would have engineer reservists or that would retreat out of battle. But then you would get guys like Action Jackson. I don't even remember the kid's name. It's just Action Jackson. He was a kid out at Turkey Bowl who was he had a dozer, one of those D9 dozers. I don't know who he's attached to, but they gave him to us. He kind of got detached from his own guys, but he just said, "Hey, what do you want me to do?" And we said, "Hey, go do that. Can you bulldoze that? Bulldoze that. Hey, take out those IEDs. Build a bridge." Kid did it. He loved it. He loved being with us because we just let him work. That's what he joined to do, and he did it. And it was even outside of his own unit. Like we should have just kept him for the deployment. And you find people like that because when you're motivated and driving at an objective, and it brings other people along with you. It's the rising tide, and I really do think that our I don't want to talk too big about it, but it does seem like our influence extended beyond our unit and actually, influenced a lot of the battle space.
Yeah, and I saw that an example with some of the first cab guys that were attached to us during Turkey Bowl too, yelling at them, "Get in the fucking fight, guys!" They're like, "We're fucking here." They're like stoked to be there with us, or
yeah,
even like that. I do remember that bulldozer, but then seeing like this other engineer unit where they ran over one AT mine, they're like, "Well, our operation's done for the whole." And no, you're staying with us. Let's go, get after it, do your job, and then seeing the various SF teams, it was infectious from everyone, and when you're in an elite organization and a proud organization that gets after it and you take out, it is infectious throughout the entire battle space. You know what I mean? And to, touch on going to Diyala River Valley, once again, a command and control supply area, they would stay and fight. They weren't clearing that with first cab. That was us, and that has to be infectious when you're like, these 300 guys are air assaulting into this area. What are we doing? Let's get after it. And there's a certain pride too. You could tell the difference between us. One example is after Turkey Bowl 2, me and Burke went on leave together because he lived in Reno. So the entire time we're on the same flights. And once we got to Germany, him and I instantly put our nicer uniform on, our pins, our CIB for him. He had a mustard stain. For me, it was my CMV and my jump wings, and put our berets and shaved. And everyone else is looking at us like we're crazy. We're like, no, we represent 573. We represent the 505th and the 82nd. We're going to look professional. And people are like, oh, look, it's paratroopers. And everyone else is wearing sunglasses inside, just looking like, soup sandwich, and there's that level of pride it's infectious. And we saw other people starting to like, oh, shaving, putting their stuff on.
Oh, yeah.
And we were just going home on leave.
My block leave was the same. I flew home on my own, and on the flight, I had my airborne wings, and I put them on my uniform. And I remember some people on the flight laughed at me about it, like, "Oh, why'd you bring your badges? This and that." And I remember one NCO who I don't even know. He stood up and goes, "Well, he's wearing his wings because he's proud of them. Like fuck off. He earned those. Look at his patches. He's proud of them." And I remember after that, like a couple of people came up to me real quietly, like, "Hey man, you got another pair? Could I put mine on?" It's like, no, you should have fucking, but like, it was just that thing of like, oh yeah, if you are proud and you're standing up and doing your thing, like it inspires other people.
Yeah. And I've been incredibly proud that I've been a part of 3505 and 573. So I conducted myself as a soldier from those two historic units and as a representation that even though I'm only an E5, that I represent this unit as a whole, and you don't get that unit pride in a lot of other units, So
I gotta admit, like one of my stupid stories is I watched Band of Brothers a little bit late, and there's one of the ones at the end of towards the end of the series, and they start singing "Blood on the Risers," and like I remember watching that with the family, and when they started singing "Blood on the Risers," like it does stir something to you. Like when we run down our dens in the morning, and as a young private, like, yeah, it was cheesy as hell. I didn't understand it. But after Iraq, as like with the 82nd, I understood. I got it,
Yeah. And also, I think the way you conduct yourself, I mean, I've been a great example for my nieces and nephews, though I've never pushed the military or fire to them. But I got a nephew right now that's, thinking about after he starts UCLA pretty soon. He got a full ride to UCLA. He wants to go do the 18 X-ray program. I got another niece in, ROTC she's a duck. She's at Oregon, and she's going to go into the military right after that to be an officer. But our example of like how proud we are, it kind of, these younger generations see it and they're like, oh, that's cool. Look what, Uncle Marc has. Everything I have is because of the Army, with this amazing job, my house, everything. It's because of my time in the military. And so they see that, and there's this newer generation from my family. I'm so proud of them because I have not been saying, oh, you should join the Army, to either one of them. But they're like, oh, look at this. Look how Uncle Marc, his house is. Look how his job is. You know what I mean? And they're like, we want that. Look how proud he is. Because that's one thing I am very proud of our service. You know, I'm very proud of every single one of you guys that I served with. You know, and that does come off.
Absolutely. Well, I've kept you for quite a while. I can talk at show.
Gotta go pick up my daughter. My wife's probably like,
"Oh no,
where are you?" I told her I was going to be in my man cave. So
yeah, I just lost track. I didn't realize we've been talking for about like an hour and a half or two, close to two now.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's not like you're not known for talking. I think that
I know, right?
One thing I remember about you, I didn't know you too well over there because you're an Alpha troop, but I do like, oh yeah, Ace likes to talk.
It's you know, one of the funniest moments was I remember getting pulled aside by Swagger for an informal counseling. He said, "You know what your problem is? Just your attitude." And I was like, I started mouthing off to him like, "Oh fuck, wait, maybe he's right." Well, thanks again for talking to me, Mark, and yeah, best of luck, man, and let us know what happens with the captain.
Yeah, a little correction. You called me Mark Harris. I think you got your gingers confused. Harris, we look the same. Harris was the ops sergeant.
Oh God.
I thought that was
funny. I'm so sorry.
You're ginger racist, Sean. You're like, right, let's look the thing. I'm just
you all look alike to me.
Yeah, we all look alike to us too, you know. Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, yeah, gingers look alike.
Yeah, God, I don't. I'll have to like try and blank that out now.
Yeah, leave it in. Fucking Mark. Yeah. Mark will get a kick out of it.
Well, perfect. Well, thanks again, man. It was good talking to you.
It was great talking to you, brother. Hopefully I see you guys at the next reunion, brother.
Thanks, you too. Bye.